Imagine it's 1975 and you're working at Kodak and everyone uses film. Everyone's images are stored in albums and Kodak is thriving. Then one day, a young engineer walks into a meeting at Kodak. His name was Steve Sasson. He walked in with a weird looking box. It was clunky, full of wires and hooked up to a cassette tape. He places it on the table and pushes the button. 30 seconds later, the world's first ever digital image appears on the screen. Kodak had just invented the future of photography, but then they buried it. Steve expected his bosses to be amazed. Instead, they weren't impressed. They asked, why would anyone want to look at a photo on a screen? Now you've got to understand, at the time, Kodak was the king of photography. They controlled 90% of the US film market, and they made billions selling rolls of film, photo paper, and chemicals for development. A camera that didn't need film? Well, that was a massive threat to their entire business model. Hey, just before we get into the really cool parts of this story, could you hit that like button and subscribe? I'd really appreciate it. So instead of developing the technology, they hid it away. And for the next 15 years, digital cameras slowly began to improve, and other companies like Sony, Nikon, and Canon saw the potential. By the 1990s, digital cameras were hitting the market, and Kodak finally realized they couldn't ignore it anymore. So they launched their own digital camera in 1991. But there was a problem. Kodak was still obsessed with film. Their first camera wasn't designed for the average person. They were expensive, clunky, and aimed at professionals. Meanwhile, other companies were making digital cameras cheaper, faster, and better. But then came the final blow. By the early 2000s, digital cameras were everywhere, and people no longer needed film, and Kodak's profits plummeted. But things got even worse in 2007, when Apple launched the iPhone. Now everyone had a digital camera in their pockets. Photography wasn't just digital anymore. It was instant, shareable, and free. Kodak, once the biggest name in photography, was struggling to stay relevant. And in 2012, Kodak filed for bankruptcy. A company that had invented the digital camera was destroyed by it. And here's the craziest part. Kodak patented the digital camera in 1978. And if only they had embraced it instead of hiding it, well, not only could they have been the leader in digital photography, they could have maybe been the next Apple or Google. Instead, they held on to film for too long. And by the time they realized their mistake, it was too late. Kodak's story is a lesson in innovation. If you resist change, even if you created it, you'll be left behind. So, what do you think? Could Kodak have been the leader in digital photography? Or do you think their fate was sealed from the start? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you like these crazy photography stories, hit that subscribe button. Because trust me, there's a lot more where this came from. I'll see you all in the next video.